Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios on this Valentine's Day. Happy... Man, I cannot believe. Thank goodness I've already sent a text to my daughter, but I did not want to be the first Valentine's Day wish go to Todd Leary from me. But you're going to be the second person. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, brother.
Hope you remembered. I hope you remembered, more importantly.
I definitely did. Miss Jessica got her Valentine gifts this morning before I left for work. So, yes, we're all set there.
Look at you go. Look at you on it.
I was on top of it for one. I planned ahead. I don't do that very often, as you know.
Man, that's impressive. Impressive. I got to give you flowers for that. No pun intended.
Yep.
Man, I know you're not a big race car fan, but NASCAR, Chase Briscoe is from Mitchell, Indiana. He's on the pole in the Daytona 500, man. Means nothing to Todd.
He's from Bedford?
Mitchell, actually.
No kidding. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I did not. Hey, this is the kind of thing when somebody is from that close to home. That's the thing. That's one of those things that can make you start, following it and watching it and sometimes fall in love with it. And I don't follow it at all, but I will, now that I know Chase Briscoe's from that close to where I live, I'll definitely keep track of it.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I mean, literally like 20 minutes down the stinking road, and this guy's on the pole at the Daytona 500.
I call everybody from down there, hillbillies anyway, so they might as well be NASCAR drivers.
Yeah, that's right. I think he races for Joe Gibbs now. This is his first season and first race for the new car. Man, they started out well, so pretty cool. It's a pretty cool deal. I enjoy watching. Yeah, like you said, especially people that are from around there. It's wild to think that. Neat. I sent out a tweet that I maintain that Lawrence County is the fastest county in the world, on the planet, because you have three astronauts from there, and then you add the pole sitter for the Daytona 500, Chase Briscoe. Kind of wild. Gus Grissom is also from Mitchell, one of the most famous astronauts. So
I think Chase Briscoe's speeds bring down that average quite a bit.
Yes, you are correct on that. A little bit. That's like averaging 80 points a game and then having to go into a game and not score.
Yeah,
it's going to hurt it a little bit. Speaking of averages, Indiana, their average has not been all that great in the hiring process of new coaches, and they're back to that coming up again. This one's kind of weird. Last year, when the football position was open, it was 3 days between the announcement and of letting Tom Allen go and the announcement of Curt Cignetti being the next head coach. That's not going to be the case here. We're going to have about 6 weeks.
Well, yeah, it's mid-season. It's mid-season, so definitely not going to be the case.
I would have to think there are advantages there to having that time to be able to really sit back and look at things, because I know a lot of people may think that Scott has one guy in mind. Well, then that's not the case. He can't have one guy in mind. He's got to be ready for plans B, C, D, and maybe even E. You look at teams last year like Kentucky, Louisville. They didn't get their first choice. Ironically, look at both of them doing very, very well with how they ended up. I mean, Dusty May was destined for Louisville. He ends up at Michigan. I don't know. Even though I think it's a dream job for him, I don't know that I see him leaving Michigan, especially if they win the Big Ten title.
I don't have inside information on that one, even though I am friends.
No,
with
I know. I'm just your opinion.
No, I'm just going to say, like, I hope that that's not the case. I don't think that would be the case. I think the fact that he's only been there 1 year is an advantage for Indiana. I do believe if he's offered that job, I think he would take it. And that's me just looking at all of the facts, of where he's from, how much family he has here. Now, if there were other factors involved, like, I said last year, it's unfortunate for him with the timing of being at Florida Atlantic and Jim Larrañaga, because with Jim Larrañaga's age, obviously I didn't know he was going to step down in the middle of the season this year like he did. But I think Dusty would have been the main target for the University of Miami last year had they been on a coaching search like they are now. With Dusty being so close in Florida Atlantic, heck, he wouldn't have had to move out of his house. He could have stayed there and coached Miami. And I thought that was the job that might keep him from coming back to Indiana for a couple of reasons. One, the convenience. His kids have grown up down there. They've been down there.
Miami.
It's the most beautiful place you can imagine. I mean, there's so many factors that I could have seen him making that his lifelong home. I could be speaking out of turn here and saying I doubt that in 1 year at Michigan they have a deep-rooted, feeling for being in Michigan. I'm sure they love it and things are going great, and I'm sure they're the toast of the town. But I just don't think that would keep you from your dream job. I think winning the Big Ten is more of a reason why he would leave. Because, how are you going to – they're going to have a fairly new roster after next year as well. He's going to have to do close to the same thing at Michigan that he would have to do at Indiana. And, his wife's family still lives here from what I understand. I know a lot of his family still lives here. And so it would surprise me if he's offered that job and turns it down. I don't care what happens at Michigan this year. I don't care if they win a national championship. It would surprise me if he's offered the Indiana job and he turns it down. He's never – I don't think he's ever going to have that. You can't ever bank on getting that opportunity again.
I agree with you. I just cannot imagine him turning the job down, which I know it's going to be probably the hardest decision he's ever had to make, just because, I forgot I left that one up there. Russell was not, he didn't care. Let me tell you why he didn't care for Valentine's Day. I think it was because maybe he didn't get the, how all the kids used to,
you traded all the.
But you could tell how popular you were by how many of those
candy.
Valentine's things you got. And if you were probably like me and got 4 or 5 out of some mercy gifts, and been like the people like
teacher.
you.
I got one from the teacher, one from the teacher's aide.
People like you had a box full of them. And I got mine in my back pocket.
I was a buck-toothed little nerd.
I was
sure. But I mean, grade school was kind of, that's what I remember most about Valentine's Day, to be honest with you. That tells you I'm not a super romantic. But I mean, I remember those days back then of having to carry in all the treats and getting all the candies and all the little stuff. Like that kind of was the introduction to Valentine's Day back in grade school. But yeah, it's a weird dynamic. I don't know you can get away with that as much in today's world as you did back then.
You can't get away with nothing in today's world, man.
Nope.
It's
everybody gets the same amount of Valentine's gifts.
Yeah. Well, the ruling did come out about the Department of Education changing their ruling on Title IX that has no bearing on the revenue sharing. So it's not going to be an issue. And I cannot wait to see how that helps Indiana football. That's going to help Indiana football more than Indiana basketball. They don't have any problems with NIL right now. And that is what makes this job so attractive. Or that's one of the things that makes this job so attractive. It has every resource available. It has great in-state recruiting built in. It is a program of tradition and power. Now, yes, they have not been good for a while. No consistency. But let me tell you, it's a sleeping giant. Do you think that if Dusty May or someone of his ilk, Chris Beard, it doesn't matter, can go to Florida Atlantic, can go to Ole Miss and do what they're doing there, that they can't do that in Indiana? It just hasn't been the right guy. And I think that changes this time around.
Well, it has to change this time around. And Indiana, the Indiana job, like, people need to sit back and kind of look at the big picture. Take the Indiana job out of it. Like, let's look at the factors that go into what makes a job attractive to coaches. And there are what are there? A half a dozen, maybe a dozen coaches across the country that are at their destination job. Like look at a Tom Izzo. He's not leaving and going somewhere. Mark Few at Gonzaga. He's proven he's not leaving and going somewhere. Danny Hurley's probably not going anywhere. Matt Painter's probably not going anywhere. Like you look at guys like that, like you're not enticing them away from their job. And it's almost silly to even consider them into the situation. But when you look at every other coach, like Indiana, I mean, you look at their record right now, I'm not trying to stir anything up there, but like North Carolina is a possibility of being an open job this year. Like they're underachieving, I think, for their standards.
It's probably going to be open. Iowa might be open.
Yeah, but Iowa's not in that same category. Like North Carolina is in that category. Like Indiana is in that top shelf level one. I don't care. The fact that their record has been bad is more enticing to a coach. He can turn it around. Like he can be the reason why it gets turned around. He can turn himself into a legendary, name at the university. And if, someone that goes to, in Iowa, like Steve Alford was a good example at Iowa, in my opinion, like, that's a stepping stone job. Unless you get a guy like a Fran McCaffrey, a guy who, is a lifer in that area. And it sounds like I'm trying to insult them, but I'm not. But that level of job is just not the same as Indiana. And Indiana, forget the fact of all the resources that they have NIL-wise and what they're able to offer a coach that comes in. This is a fan base that, is in the top 5% of fan bases. Now, top 1% of crazy fan bases, and I'm in that category. So I'm not calling anybody else out. Like, we're all crazy about it. Like, we think about it way too much and talk about it way too much. But, like Indiana's job is a dream job for 98% of the coaching population. And anyone who says different than that is crazy. The money they will pay somebody coming in here is going to be a top level money situation, and so they're going to have all the tools and resources possible. They're going to have to deal with crazy fans. They're going to have to deal with high expectations. And look, coaches don't look at that as a negative. If the expectations are low, that's when things would be subject to other coaches might have question marks about it. But Indiana's not in that category. And so it's a dream job for 98% of the coaching world. And let's just hope they pull off a miracle. And I'm not even letting myself go down the route of thinking, everybody's number one person for that job, which it has been the last three hires, would consider it. But you never know.
The funny thing is, Dusty is without question. He has to be the, I don't want to say the leader in the clubhouse, but he has to be number one on Scott Dolson's speed dial. One would think. Common sense would tell you that, because the relationships, he knows the program. He has been successful. He's shown that he is successful at two different places in a short period of time. And so I'm not trying to pick on you, Philip. Here, I just saw a comment that said the Final Four was, aided by something. Man, you get a school like that to a Final Four.
What was it aided by? What was it aided by?
And within a last-second shot of going to the title game, now you go to a 3-17 Michigan program. They were 3-17 last season. He's got them in the lead of the Big Ten. So somebody else asked about proof. I'm like, man, he don't have to prove jack to anybody. He's done that. So there's no doubt about his coaching chops.
Honestly, what he's done at Michigan this year is, to me, is more impressive than what he did at Florida Atlantic and taking them to the Final Four. And I say that because he's done it in 1 year, and he had to do what a lot of coaches are considering the most difficult thing in the world is right now, and that's rebuild an entire roster and get these guys to play well together. And he did that. He's going to have to do it at Indiana next year. Probably going to have to do it for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And he's proven he can do it. So I think what he's done at Michigan this year put him into, Brad Stevens is always going to be everybody's number 1A. He's my 1A. He's everybody's 1A at Indiana. And that might be silly because he hasn't been in college basketball for a long time. But I don't care. He just seems to be a basketball savant genius to me. And,
he is.
And so we're all going to say that it's probably unrealistic. So I think the guy that's put himself to the top 3 category with what he's done this season is Dusty May. And I, hopefully there's a couple other candidates, a couple other Curt Cignettis out there we don't know about. But Dusty May has definitely, with what he's done at Michigan this year, I wanted him to be the coach because he's a great dude. Like, he's just a good person. He understands what Indiana basketball has always been about, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And he knows that. He wants it to be back to that. He knows how to get it to that. So I think he's at that top level. What he's done at Michigan this year proves another level to me that if it's not Brad Stevens, for me, you can't miss with Dusty May. I'm not saying he's the only guy you could hire. I'm just saying I don't think you could miss with Dusty May.
Now, with IU fans, your average fan off the street, at least I know that they started a poll on the Hoosier.com, and it is an overwhelming desire to have Chris Beard. And I mean, not by a close margin. So that I don't see that happening because, well, first of all, because I think Dusty does get offered the job and I think he takes it, but I just don't know that they'll go that route. But my God, boy, wouldn't that be, that is not, it's hard to go. They're two different, very different choices, but man, the path that both would take you on would possibly end up at the same place, just going down a different way to get there.
Well, and I'll just say that Chris Beard has been, like, I've had him on my radar for a long time. I like the way he coaches. I like the way his teams play. I understand there's outside baggage and that kind of thing. Those are the things that, I don't think we know the full story of that. And that's what, the athletic program, if they're considering him a candidate, they're the ones that need to find out all the story to that. And I don't think we'll ever know that. But there is no question that he can coach basketball. And I think his allegiance to Coach Knight and his continued allegiance over the years, it's unwavering. It's never changed. He's always mentioning Coach Knight and referencing him and wearing stuff on his shirt. And, he's for a guy that didn't play for Coach Knight, he's about as close as you can get to being an Indiana guy. And so, I honestly believe that he and Dusty May are in a little bit of a higher category because of their allegiance to, at the end of the day, I did not know Curt Cignetti's name before they, were interviewing him. And I don't think I could possibly be more pleasantly surprised, not just with the results. I was lucky enough to meet him in Scott Dolson's office, about a month ago. And he was just as impressive in a 5-minute meeting as I wanted him to be. It's one of those things, you don't want to meet your heroes because you're afraid, they'll disappoint you. I wasn't disappointed in meeting Curt Cignetti. I was actually more wowed, and I sing his praises more after I met him. And it wasn't because of a whole lot of what he did or said. Scott Dolson explained to me, and this is, I told you it was a month ago. Like, this is in January. The season's not going on anymore. Like, this is definitely the beginning of the off season for them. And he was in at 4:30 in the morning. He was watching film. He actually walked in with a list of things for Scott Dolson that he had come up with on a film and things that Dolson needed for him. And he had done it super early in the morning. And the guy checks every box. And there's a Curt Cignetti out there in the basketball world. And if it's not one of the big names that we all love and want, Dusty May, Chris Beard, Brad Stevens, then I hope they find that basketball Curt Cignetti.
Definitely, because if you do, you have you go from
if you do, Scott Dolson wrote his ticket to be the AD until the day he dies or the day he chooses not to be the AD.
And the Indiana Athletics Hall of Fame.
Yes,
and probably the Indiana Hall of Fame.
The very top of it.
Because you're right. He will have done what nobody has done in the history of IU athletics. Yeah. And that is having IU basketball. If he can get IU basketball being just, what they should be. I'm not saying that they're going to be what they were.
Consistent top 25 team. If they get him to be a consistent top 25 team and the football team is they don't have to go to the national playoffs every year. But if they're a consistently ranked top 25 team and the basketball team is too, those teams always make the tournament. Like, top 25 teams make the NCAA tournament. So that's basically what I'm saying. If they can get back into that category, if Dolson's responsible for getting Indiana back to that consistent category, his picture goes at the very top of the Indiana Basketball Athletic Hall of Fame.
Well, yours is at the top of our Hall of Fame, brother, and appreciate you as always. Hope you have a great Valentine's weekend with Miss Jessica.
We will do that for sure. I'll tell her you said that. She'll appreciate it.
Please do. Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.